Welcome to True God Code. If this is your first time here, this channel applies the ancient prophetic texts of Scripture to verified historical facts and documented real-world evidence, and shows you what the evidence actually produces. No sensationalism, no speculation presented as prophecy. Documented facts first. Framework interpretation clearly labeled as interpretation. If that is what you are looking for, subscribe now. Hit the notification bell so you do not miss what is coming, and share this video with someone who is paying attention to what is happening in the world right now, because what we are about to show you today is not a prediction about the future. It happened this morning. Here is what this video will cover. On May 25, 2026, Pope Leo XIV walked into the Vatican's Synod Hall and did something no pope in modern history had ever done. He personally presented his own encyclical letter to the world. The document is called Magnifica Humanitas, Magnificent Humanity. It is 245 paragraphs, 5 chapters, approximately 42,000 words, the first encyclical in the history of the Catholic Church devoted entirely to a single technology. That technology is artificial intelligence. We will walk through every chapter of what the Pope actually said. We will hear from every speaker who stood alongside him. We will look at what this means for Christians, for the world, and for the True God Code framework that has been documenting the architecture of the final age. This is one of the most significant days in this watch period. Let us begin. Chapter 1. Why you should care about this document. Before we open a single page of Magnifica Humanitas, we need to answer the question that every honest viewer is asking. Why should I care what the Pope says? Here is the answer, not the spiritual answer, the structural one. The Catholic Church has 1.4 billion members. That is 1 in every 5 human beings on earth. Those members include the presidents and prime ministers of Brazil, Mexico, Italy, Spain, France, the Philippines, Poland, Argentina, Colombia, Portugal, Ireland, and dozens of other nations. They include the leadership of the world's largest hospital networks, the most influential universities in the history of Western civilization, and the diplomatic corps of more than 100 countries. When the Vatican issues a formal doctrinal document, an encyclical, it does not suggest, it teaches. Every Catholic bishop, priest, theologian, politician, and institution in the world is expected to engage with it, apply it, and answer to it. Magnifica Humanitas has just told 1.4 billion people, many of whom hold positions of governing authority, that artificial intelligence must be evaluated by specific moral criteria, that autonomous weapons are not permissible, that the concentration of AI power in private hands is a structural injustice, and that the Church is the institution with the criteria for making those determinations. You do not have to be Catholic for this to affect your world. You just have to live in a world governed in part by people who are. And for Christians specifically, for everyone who reads Daniel 9, Revelation 13 and Revelation 17, and asks what these passages look like when they begin to take shape in history, today is a day that deserves careful attention. Chapter 2, the document and the day Magnifica Humanitas was signed by Leo XIV on May 15, 2026. The 135th anniversary of Rerum Novarum, the foundational document of Catholic social teaching, published by Pope Leo XIII in 1891. That date was deliberate. Leo XIV is positioning himself explicitly in the tradition of Leo XIII, the Pope who spoke to the Industrial Revolution. The message is unmistakable. What Leo XIII was to factories and labor and capital in 1891, Leo XIV intends to be to artificial intelligence in 2026. The document was released on May 25th, Shavuot, the Jewish feast of Pentecost, the Feast of the Covenant, the feast where Peter first publicly declared the Joel 2:31 prophecy fulfilled in Jerusalem in AD 33. We note the date and continue. The presentation at the new Synod Hall was itself historic. Per CNN, Leo XIV is the first pontiff to personally present an encyclical letter to the world at the Vatican. Every prior pope had handed that role to cardinals. Leo XIV stood before the audience himself. 6 speakers joined him. We will meet each of them. And the one who drew the most global attention was not a cardinal. It was the co-founder of the AI safety company Anthropic, Christopher Olah, standing on a Vatican stage alongside the Pope of the Catholic Church. No representative of OpenAI was present. No representative of Google DeepMind. No representative of Meta or Microsoft. Their absence from that stage was itself a statement. Chapter 3. The Two Images. Leo XIV builds the entire encyclical on 2 biblical images. He returns to them throughout. They are the frame within which everything else is understood. The first is the Tower of Babel. The book of Genesis describes a people who gathered in the land of Shinar and decided to build a city with a tower whose top would reach the heavens. A single language, a single technology, a single direction. They wanted power that could not be scattered. They wanted to make a name for themselves. Leo XIV reads this as the template for what goes wrong when human technological ambition disconnects from God and from other people. The Babel project was not evil in its materials. It was dangerous in its direction. It chose uniformity over communion. It sacrificed diversity for control. And the result was not the unity it sought, but the very dispersion it feared. He calls this the Babel syndrome, the idolatry of profit that sacrifices the weak, the pretense that a single digital language can translate everything, including the mystery of the human person, into data and performance. The second image is Nehemiah rebuilding Jerusalem after the Babylonian exile. The city was in ruins. The walls collapsed. The gates burned. Nehemiah did not impose a solution from above. He gathered the families. He assigned each household a section of the wall. He listened. He coordinated. He built through shared responsibility. Leo XIV says the choice before humanity in the age of artificial intelligence is exactly this choice. Not technology or no technology, not AI or no AI, but which direction, Babel or Jerusalem, domination and uniformity, date or communion and shared responsibility. The primary choice, he writes, is not between a yes or a no to technology. It is between constructing Babel or rebuilding Jerusalem. Chapter 4, who controls the technology and what the Church just said about it. This is the chapter that carries the most structural weight in the entire encyclical, and it contains 2 moves that, taken together, represent the most consequential institutional claim in the history of Catholic social teaching. The first move, Leo XIV asks directly who holds the power. In the past, it was largely up to the state to guide and direct innovation. Today, the main drivers of development are private, often transnational, parties with resources and capacity that surpass those of many governments. Technological power has taken on an unprecedented, predominantly private aspect. Control over platforms, infrastructure, data and computing power does not rest with states. It rests with major economic and technological actors. He quotes Pope Francis, "Those with the economic resources to use these technologies have been given an impressive dominance over the whole of humanity and the entire world." And he states the premise the entire encyclical rests on: technology is never neutral, because it takes on the characteristics of those who devise it, finance it, regulate it, and use it. Therefore, a more moral AI is not enough if that morality is determined by a few. These are the new monopolies of AI, the epistemic, economic, and political asymmetry that concentrates the most consequential technology in human history in a small number of private hands, accountable to no public authority. The second move, having named the problem, Leo XIV extends Catholic doctrine to address it directly. In paragraph 67, he extends the principle of the universal destination of goods, the Catholic teaching that the goods of creation are destined for all people, not just those who own them, to explicitly include patents, algorithms, digital platforms, technological infrastructure, and data. This is a doctrinal expansion of historic consequence. The right to private property is protected in Catholic teaching, but it is not absolute. It is subordinated to the common good. What Leo XIV has now established is that algorithms, platforms, data, and AI infrastructure carry the same social obligation as any other created good. Those who build them are not exempt from moral accountability simply because they hold the patents. He applies subsidiarity to platforms, stating that the major economic and technological actors exercising effective power over everyday life are subject to moral accountability at the highest level. He applies social justice to algorithms. Catholic social doctrine must now combat opaque algorithms that perpetuate prejudice and discrimination. This is not commentary. This is binding doctrine on 1.4 billion people, and it says directly that the AI infrastructure being built by private companies is subject to the moral criteria of the universal destination of goods. Chapter 5. What AI is and is not. Leo XIV addresses what artificial intelligence actually is and what it is not, with more precision than most observers expected from a papal document. He refuses to equate AI with human intelligence. AI systems do not undergo experiences. They do not possess a body. They do not feel joy or pain. They do not have a moral conscience, empathy, or affective, relational, or spiritual capabilities. He makes an observation that surprised the technology community. He writes that current AI systems are more cultivated than built, and that even their designers possess only a limited understanding of their actual functioning. This is a direct acknowledgement of the interpretability problem. The most powerful AI systems being deployed today are not fully understood by the people who created them. He warns that the artificial imitation of care or support can become particularly risky. Users may gradually lose the very desire to form genuine human connections when a machine can simulate listening, simulated warmth, and simulated understanding. He calls for robust legal frameworks, independent oversight, informed users. He says that calling for a slower pace of AI adoption when necessary is not opposition to progress. It is responsible care for the human family. And he addresses AI developers personally in the text itself. Every design choice reflects a vision of humanity. When a developer decides what an AI system optimizes for, what it measures, what it rewards, they are encoding a vision of what a human being is. That is not a technical choice, it is a moral one. Chapter 6. Truth, Work, and Freedom. Chapter 4 of the encyclical addresses three areas where AI is already reshaping human life most directly. On truth and democracy, disinformation did not begin with AI, but today it finds a powerful amplifier in AI. Democracy depends on a shared pursuit of the veracity of facts, perceived as a common good. Leo XIV cites Hannah Arendt on how totalitarianism feeds on the collapse of the distinction between fact and fiction. When the information environment is so corrupted that citizens cannot agree on what is real, democratic deliberation does not weaken, it collapses. On work, the encyclical's most quoted economic line, the pursuit of greater profits cannot justify choices that systematically sacrifice jobs, because the human person is an end, not a means, and the economic order must remain subordinate to human dignity and the common good. He addresses the displacement of human labor by automation directly, not as inevitable, as a moral question with a moral answer. On freedom, Leo XIV addresses the systems through which people access healthcare, employment, credit, and community. When those systems are governed by AI optimizing for metrics rather than human dignity, and when they block access on the basis of data tainted by prejudice and injustice, they are not morally neutral, they are instruments of exclusion. He includes a remarkable and unexpected paragraph. He asks forgiveness in the name of the Church for the institution's historical complicity in slavery. He says the memory of past blindness is a call to vigilance. What we have learned must be translated into discernment and responsibility in the present. Chapter 7. The words. No Pope has said. Before Chapter 5 is where Magnifica Humanitas becomes most direct, and it contains the statements that stopped the world's newsrooms on May 25, 2026. Leo XIV identifies a culture of power, a mode of civilization that measures worth by utility, prizes efficiency over relationship, and resolves disputes through force. He says plainly, humanity is slipping into a violent culture of power. Then, the statement that drew headlines across every continent, just war theory, is now outdated. The centuries-old moral framework for evaluating whether military force is justified, developed by Augustine, refined by Aquinas, applied across 1600 years of church teaching, Leo XIV declares it no longer adequate for the age we are in. Armed force can now be justified only for self-defense in the strictest sense. This is not a minor adjustment to the tradition, it is categorical. Then he speaks about autonomous weapons, and here we stop and give these words the full weight they deserve. The Pope said, in his own voice from his own prepared remarks, in the Synod Hall on May 25, 2026, some autonomous weapon systems have advanced practically beyond any human reach to govern them effectively. It is not permissible to entrust irreversible, lethal decisions to AI systems. There is a race, driven by a dehumanizing ambition, to develop ever more powerful technologies or to secure control over them. Read those three statements again slowly. The head of the institution, with 1.4 billion members in every nation on Earth, has formally declared that autonomous weapon systems, machines that identify, decide, and act without a human in the decision chain, are not permissible, that some have already advanced beyond human governance, that the race to build them is driven by dehumanizing ambition. Then he extends the disarmament demand beyond warfare. Disarming AI means freeing it from the mentality of armed competition, which today is not limited simply to the military context, but is also an economic and cognitive phenomenon. The word disarm, chosen deliberately, repeated twice for this moment. Chapter 8. The six speakers. 6 voices joined the Pope on the Vatican stage. Each one carries specific significance. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican Secretary of State, framed the entire occasion with one sentence: the asymmetry between technical power and moral wisdom is perhaps the deepest challenge that Magnifica Humanitas hands to us. His closing: the technological future is not a destiny already written, but a space entrusted to human responsibility. Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez and the Vatican's chief doctrinal authority presented the encyclical's theological core. His central statement: every human being has an infinite dignity and never loses that sublime capacity to love that God gave him when he created him. He warned of a false mysticism of technology where faith is replaced by total trust in technological capacities, and hope becomes a superficial hope for a new product. Anna Rowlands from Durham University placed the encyclical in the tradition of Laudato Si, with language that cut through every diplomatic softness. The powers of innovation that traditionally resided with states are today concentrated in the hands of a few wealthy private actors, whose cultures are removed from the scrutiny of the common good and risk appearing as a new imperium. She called the encyclical a gospel cry, to build a civilization of love and oppose a culture of mere power. Leoka Lushombo, born in the Democratic Republic of Congo, brought the voice of those who live closest to the supply chain that makes all of this possible. AI can very easily be colonial. Colonialism in our day no longer dominates only bodies, but appropriates data, transforming personal lives into exploitable information. She quoted the encyclical directly: adolescents and children work in dangerous conditions, crushing the materials from which rare earths are extracted, bodies marked, mutilated, consumed so that the flow of computation does not stop. Cardinal Michael Czerny, the Jesuit prefect for integral human development, linked the digital crisis to the ecological crisis with one framing: the digital construction site and the construction site of our common home converge on the same question. What world are we building, and what place does the human person have in it? Journey had the previous week formally established the new Vatican Interdicasterial Commission on Artificial Intelligence, drawing 7 Vatican bodies under one coordinating mandate. Christopher Olah, co-founder of Anthropic, the only AI company representative on the Vatican stage. He said 3 things. First, every frontier AI lab, including Anthropic, operates inside a set of incentives and constraints that can sometimes conflict with doing the right thing. Even well-intentioned researchers remain inside those forces. Second, there is a real possibility that AI will displace human labor at very large scale. If that happens, supporting those displaced will be a moral imperative of historic proportions. Third, if we want this technology to go well, it is enormously important that there be people outside those incentives who are willing to be our earnest, thoughtful critics. That is what I see in Magnifica Humanitas. We need moral voices that the incentives cannot bend. He thanked the Pope for walking together. The Pope thanked him in return. No one from OpenAI, no one from Google DeepMind, no one from Meta or Microsoft. The guest list at a Vatican launch like this is the message. Chapter 9. What this means for Christians. Before the framework reading. Something needs to be said plainly to every Christian watching. What Leo XIV said today engages genuine biblical themes: human dignity, the image of God, the call to serve the poor and the vulnerable, the danger of idolatry, the responsibility to govern power with wisdom. These are not marginal concerns. They are central to the tradition that most Christians share, regardless of denomination. You do not have to accept the Vatican's doctrinal authority to recognize that what was said today names something real. The concentration of AI power in private hands is real. The displacement of human labor is real. The deployment of autonomous weapons beyond human governance is real. The colonization of data from the poorest communities on Earth is real. These are documented facts in 2026. Christians are called to be watchmen, not fearful, not sensationalist, clear-eyed. The book of Daniel commands understanding. The book of Revelation commands watching. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 says the day should not surprise those who are awake, because they can see the season they are in. What Magnifica Humanitas does, whatever its institutional source, is add a 245-paragraph doctrinal document to the record of what is happening in the world in 2026. It names specific things that this channel has been documenting for months: the concentration of private power, the autonomous weapons race, the AI governance gap, the risk of a system that excludes the non-compliant. We are not in 2033, we are in the season before 2033. And the season before looks like this. Chapter 10. The True God Code Framework. Reading the True God Code Framework has identified the Vatican and Pope Leo XIV as the primary candidate for what Revelation 17 calls the woman who rides the beast. Not the builder of the beast system, not the operator of it, the institution that claims moral authority over it, the one who sits astride the system and determines what is legitimate. The harlot in Revelation 17 does not rule through force. She rules through moral necessity, through the claim that nothing is fully legitimate without her blessing, through the assertion that she holds the criteria for what is acceptable. Magnifica Humanitas is the formal institutional claim to exactly that position. The Vatican is not building the AI infrastructure. It is not deploying autonomous weapons. It is not running the covenant architecture or the digital financial system. It is declaring the moral criteria by which all of those activities must be judged. It has extended its doctrine to cover algorithms and platforms as goods subject to the common good. It has established a permanent commission to govern the Church's institutional engagement with AI across 7 Vatican bodies. It has invited the AI safety company explicitly opposed to the deployment model this framework has been documenting, and placed it on the stage beside the Pope. That is the harlot riding the beast, not condemning it, not stopping it, claiming authority over its moral legitimacy. Think about what that means in practice. Every government, every corporation, every institution with Catholic leadership that now deploys AI will have to engage with this framework. Will have to answer whether their AI serves human dignity or subjugates it. By whose criteria? The Vatican's. That is not a suggestion, it is doctrine. The framework upgrades Leo XIV, religious legitimacy, from 33% to 40% on the basis of today's events. The Vatican identification is held as our best current reading, not certainty, not doctrine, held honestly and open to revision. What is not open to revision is what was documented today. An institution with 1.4 billion members formally claimed the position of moral arbiter over the infrastructure of the final age. That is either the most extraordinary institutional coincidence in the history of religion and technology, or it is exactly what Revelation 17 said would happen. We present the record. You read the text. You decide. The close Leo XIV stood before the world on May 25, 2026 and said, "Artificial intelligence must be disarmed. It is not permissible to delegate lethal decisions to machines. No one rebuilds alone. If this video gave you something to think about, share it with someone. Someone in your life is watching what is happening in the world right now and asking the same questions you are. Send them here. Subscribe to True God Code for monthly intelligence reports, beast system analysis, and the ongoing documentation of the season we're in. Leave a comment below with the moment that hit hardest. We read everyone. We are not building fear, we are building understanding. Because the same texts that describe what is coming also describe the one who holds it all, right, and whose return is the point of everything we are watching for. We do not interpret, we decipher, then we watch.